Welcome back, everybody. Debbie and Dan here for Action-Based Leaders. Today, we're diving back in. Last week, we were talking about a culture of accountability and started to really go down a rabbit hole around one-on-ones, because I think there's so much in people talk about, yeah, we're going to have one-on-ones, we're going to cancel them, we're going to move them around. Debbie, welcome back. And I'm super excited about this because of past experiences that I've had, and I know that this is a hot topic inside of different companies. And I know one-on-ones are typically a red word as well, right? You brought out the red-green around accountability last week.
Yes.
So what fosters a culture of accountability?
Absolutely. The biggest thing about accountability, there are certain things you can do to foster the culture. So let me give you those really quick, because a one-on-one is in that. But the first one, the most important, is always leading by example. So we said it last week, right? If you're not seeing it in your team, you have to ask, where am I not doing it? Where am I giving my team permission that they don't have to be accountable? So lead by example. And the reason why it's so important, leading by example is not just about preaching a message. We believe, and I believe, the leader is the message. So whatever you're seeing is the message you're giving, period. That is number one for fostering a culture of accountability. What do you want to say about that?
Everybody's always heard that lead by example.
Yeah.
When you say be the example, right now, all of a sudden we're at like philosophical stage, right?
The leader is the message.
Yeah. I just go back to Caddyshack, like, or just, be the ball kind of thing. But same kind of thing. Being it is way different at a higher level to me than just leading it.
Yep. You are it regardless, right? Whether you're leading negatively motivated or positively motivated, that is the message. You carry the title. Your title carries that message. You are truly the light. Whatever you're putting out there is exactly what you're getting, period. Right. I understand that there's definitely some leaders out there that probably have inherited a team that sucks, or inherited a team that was following a leader and they're having to do some nurturing and rebuilding and restructuring. Totally understandable. This is about those things that, what are you seeing over and over and over? And you have to realize you are a part of cultivating that example, because you're the message, period. Part of that is number two for cultivating a culture of accountability is set your expectations. Setting expectations and living by them, doing them. There is nothing more frustrating than if there is an expectation and the person that's setting it isn't living it.
I've always heard it because it was the saying, hey, never meet your heroes because they're always going to let you down.
There you go. There you go. Wow. That's crazy. So what about this one, right? Who's your hero?
That's what it is.
Who's your hero? Me in 5 years. Live from that.
Now it's setting the expectation and starting to live by it, right?
Exactly. And that shifts the mindset of accountability, period. Again, it always goes back to that. I am accountable to you for your success. So because of that, I'm going to set expectations with you. I'm going to hold to those expectations for you, because if I'm not doing it, I can't expect you to do it, period. Make sense?
Yeah. That's awesome.
A part of that though too is also providing support and resources. How many times do we, want our team to do things off of nothing? They don't have the support that they need. They don't have our support, or they don't have the support of the organization even that they need, or the resources or the training or those things that are making them better. There's nothing more frustrating than, as a team member, you and I've talked about this because we've seen this a lot in organizations, and we've talked about them even on this podcast, where there's a leader that is asking their team to do something so that ultimately that leader is bonused at their expense.
Yeah. The rewarding underperformance and lack of accountability.
Yeah. So they're due that from us. That's part of being accountable to them for their success. The other piece to it is encouraging ownership. And in encouraging ownership, what are they receiving? The validation, those rewards for taking ownership of the job role. I love this one. This is the next one. It's building a culture of feedback. So while you're building a culture of accountability, you have to have a culture of feedback. Because, for instance, if Dan, I'm your leader and I'm not being accountable to you, am I giving you the groundwork or the space to be able to say, Debbie, I need this from you, and I don't feel like, you're showing up for me in that area. And
That
then
was actually,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that was actually one of the last companies I was in that actually really started to push hard on one-on-ones and making them non-negotiable. That was always the last piece was, hey, this is your teammates. This is your,
yeah,
whoever's one-on-one. It wasn't the leader that owned the one-on-one. The employee or the teammate did, and it was theirs to run. But ultimately, always at the end, it was supposed to be ended as, what else can I do to serve you? Or how am I not showing up? And it was more like that feedback. And this was on a weekly basis. It was like, hey, what else can I help you with? Like, where am I not showing up? What else do you need from me?
Yep. And that's it. And that is the crux. So then that brings us to that non-negotiable one-on-one. First and foremost, make them non-negotiable. Non-negotiable means unless it's a 911, that meeting does not get moved, period. Right? That is the only way that it's moved is if there's a 911. That tells the employee, number one, right off the bat, is you're accountable to them. So much so that you will move the world for them and that you are showing up for them. It also, you always close them with the feedback piece. I love, and yes, that is where we go when we're leading, is they build their one-on-one because you're teaching them a true, it's a principle for us with action-based leaders is how do you ask for what you want? In order to ask for what you want, you have to know what you want. So you raise your leaders up that are working for you to do that. Let them drive that one-on-one. There will be parameters, some of the things that we suggest in one-on-ones. My favorite input inside of a one-on-one is a competency-based one-on-one. If organizations will move to more of a competency-based mindset, you're talking about exponential growth amongst your teams. And go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to ask, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What do you mean by competency-based?
Correct. So competency-based means what in this job role does this person need to be successful? Now, we've narrowed it down. We know what the top 8 are. We've been doing this a long time. All right. But I'll give you a couple of them for the sake of time. But always, inevitably, effective communication is always going to be a competency, period. Yeah. Okay. There has to be effective communication. Am I giving my team the information that I need? Am I giving the other departments the information they need? Are my clients getting whatever it is? There's so much room for measuring it. But once it's competency based, then what you get to do inside the one-on-one is what does skilled look like? What does not skilled look like? So if I know this is what effective communication looks like in this role, then you as my leader get to work with me with that if I'm not fulfilling it yet, but I'm eager to do it.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yep.
Another one that, in all honesty, and these are just 2 of the top ones, the other one that you see over and over and over as a competency is critical thinking. So therefore, am I thinking of the big picture when I make this decision? Am I able to delegate or make this decision based on the long term for where it's headed, where it's going? Huge piece is critical thinking. But
is that a ranking thing? Like how do you evaluate somebody on critical thinking?
Well, we have this, we're going to come up with what skilled and unskilled would look like inside of your organization. Yes, very much so could be a ranking. But the other piece of it, for instance, so say you're over somebody that is leading another team. And when they're leading the other team, maybe they're keeping weight a little longer than they need to. Right? They're not cleaning things out as quickly as maybe they need to. There's a critical thinking piece that goes in there because they're short-term thinking. They're thinking for right now, not for long-term. right? That's one little element. There's a lot of pieces that go into critical thinking, but are they truly thinking for the long term of not just the organization, but for the initiatives that need to be met, for the goals that need to be met? And are they able to make whole decisions for that, or are they just making singular for comfort in the moment?
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, critical thinking is actually huge. It's a huge piece. And it's not necessarily designed probably more for those hourly roles. You want to see it a little bit there, but those are more your rote type roles. But for those people that are in more strategic roles that are actually you're moving the organization for growth, there has to be a strategic critical piece there that they can lock into why they're making that decision.
I think it's a bigger piece, right? They're gonna spend more time actually thinking than doing, right? Yeah. They're not in the doer role. If they're the ones strategizing, then they got to come up with the concepts and start playing with all the different, poke holes in the ideas and then start figuring out where and how to actually get it done.
Well, and here's another thing. If there is a department that has a whole lot of conflict going on, there's probably not a whole lot of critical thinking going on. Meaning serious conflict. I'm talking the backbiting. You want there to be tension, right? We talk about that when we discuss conflict. I'm talking about true backbiting, just undermining, water cooler, groupthink, all of that. That's short term. There's a lot of short term thinking going on for that particular moment.
Yeah, and it's definitely, once you have that, it's hard to get rid of, right? Because that becomes a snowball.
Becomes the norm. It becomes the norm, right? It really does become the norm. So why wouldn't you make a competency for measurement? And here's the other powerful thing about competencies. If you set growth up for one-on-ones for your team members, and they're the same competencies across the board, okay? But if you have a competency-based one-on-one, I'm now able to have conversations with you about your growth based off of factual data that has been set up as a measurement versus my own feelings, my own bias for how I feel about you.
Yeah.
Competency, that's where one-on-ones get powerful, and it's in the control of the employee for their success.
Well, I think that also then leads into what we're going to talk about next is around what that building of trust and communication actually looks like.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to stop it there. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Love diving into the one-on-one stuff. Come back next week with Debbie and Dan on Action-Based Leaders when we're going to go through building trust and communication in your teams.
All right. We'll see ya.